Welcome to another episode of Living with Purpose. And today I have a veteran who spent over 30 years at Microsoft doing some amazing stuff. For all of you listeners who love games, Jeff was part of the Xbox team for a very long time, and also he was involved in quantum computing that Microsoft is now very much involved in. He's got this enormous technical background and technical experience. He's also the co-owner of the rugby team, Seawolves, growing rugby population in the city. But more importantly, he's also been involved with giving back and supporting the community by what he does with his motorcycle group, raising funds for philanthropy for the humane. So I'm going to get Jeff to share a little bit about his journey. So please join me in welcoming Jeff.
Thank you. It's really great to be here. It's a privilege to get to talk with you. I've been listening to some of your earlier episodes and I'm just so impressed with the guests that you've had on.
Well, this is what comes with when you get old. You get to know everybody. Especially if you have run Microsoft's corporate philanthropy, you do get to meet a lot of interesting people all over the world.
Absolutely. I think you hit it really well. There's kind of a couple of great passions in my life outside of family. Technology is obviously one of them. Had a very fun career that I feel very blessed to have had the opportunity to work with some incredible teams to build exciting products. And giving back to the community around a few really important causes that have always motivated me. It's been great to be able to give back along the way.
So just for our listeners, share with us your journey. How did Jeff grow up? Why did Jeff go into technology? And then why what you're doing with these varied interests that you have, so people get a sense of how each one of us has this amazing opportunity to grow and learn and build a life in interesting ways.
Yeah, I grew up here in the Pacific Northwest, and honestly, I began programming at a very early age, about 4th grade, actually, in primary school. Our classroom was really fortunate. It received the first personal computer that the entire district had taken in and deployed. And there were just a handful of kids that kind of gravitated toward it and wanted to understand how it worked, how to program it, how to make it do the things that we wanted to do. And so, kind of in the very, very early primary school years, I began developing a hobby around programming. And that just sort of developed over the rest of my school years to the point where eventually I was beginning college down at Oregon State University in Corvallis, Oregon, but had an opportunity to interview for an internship with Microsoft. And even though I was only 18 at the time, I had an opportunity to work at Microsoft and begin working on some really, really exciting projects. Hired on there full-time when I was 19, and that began 32 years of excitement and fun building out exciting products and some global businesses at Microsoft.
So you in which school district were you in? Where did you grow up?
I was born here in Seattle, Washington, but I grew up in Portland, Oregon, where my folks moved for work when I was very young. And wound up going to Oregon State right out of high school. But that was a briefly lived college stint as I started at Microsoft just a year later.
So talking a bit about, your introduction to computers, what are some of the fun things you did?
So there were a couple of interesting things that happened. As I mentioned, we got the first personal computer, a Commodore PET, into our classroom. And just learning the fundamentals of programming on that, it came with manuals. None of the school staff were familiar with computers at the time. There was obviously no curriculum because this was back in the mid-1980s. So there wasn't really any STEM type of curriculum that involved computer science. So it was really self-taught with programming manuals for that first system. And that's what really whet my appetite for creating experiences on these computers. That evolved as my folks, I know that they scrimped and saved over the course of, I think, a year to be able to afford to buy us a very introductory level system for the house. And it was when I got that system in at home, and it was an archaic system. It was a Z80-based system that connected up to a black and white TV. But that's where I began doing my very first video game programming, developing some really fundamental video games. I think I was about 13 or 14 years old at the time when I started writing games. And it just developed into this hobby and this passion that evolved over the years, and was able to sort of foray into a career doing some of the same things.
You know what is interesting is that there are so many people even today, get introduced to something, whether it is computers, whether it is art, whether it is writing, whether it is music, whether it is even going out and volunteering, and how that suddenly becomes part of something that drives them and becomes just so deeply rooted into how they show up and how it did, even if it does not become a profession. In your case, it did become a profession, but in many cases, it may not, but it still is so valuable to kind of get hooked onto something early in life.
Well, I think the most important thing is that you find something that you enjoy. And if you can make a career out of that, it's all the better. But, we have precious little time in this world. And spending it on things that we enjoy with people that we enjoy being around is vital. And so I've told my kids, as they're now college age and they're getting their degrees, get your degree in something that you actually enjoy, that brings you joy and develops a passion in you. Because if it does foray into a career, that's something you're going to spend decades on. And we want to be happy when we're doing that. That joy and happiness that we take out of our work, we wind up putting back. And we really perform at our best when we love what we're doing.
Right. So talk a little bit about, your 30-year stint at Microsoft. I mean, what you started doing, how you evolved, some of the interesting lessons that you may have acquired while you were there.
So I came into Microsoft initially working on developer tools, our compilers and debuggers and the things that help developers be more productive. And I spent 7 or 8 years working on that. And one of the really amazing things about Microsoft is that they encourage curiosity. So after you spend a time really getting to understand a technology and the business around it, there's always an opportunity to develop curiosity about new things and explore new parts of the company and new potential businesses. So every 5 to 7 years, I would find myself beginning to want to explore other things. After developer tools, I spent some time sort of helping Microsoft embrace the internet, building Internet Explorer and Internet Information Server, really understanding the client and the server sides of that business. That sort of took me into the mid to late 90s, where it was beginning to feel like I already had a full career. That's 15, 16 years at a company is a long time.
Yeah.
And just as I was beginning to have those initial self-questions of, is this long enough at Microsoft? Is it time to consider something else? I wound up in sort of a casual conversation with a few other technology leaders around the company around the idea of building a game console. And it was a powerful conversation because it recognized that Microsoft had built this incredible company around making people more productive at work. We had Windows powering PCs around the world, Office running on top of that, an entire third-party ecosystem of software. And Windows had become the productivity platform of choice at the time. But there was a recognition that there was likely going to be an entertainment platform, and it wasn't a given that that entertainment platform would be a Microsoft platform. And so the idea of investing in an entire new category of hardware and software to enable Microsoft to participate in that entertainment ecosystem became strategically really interesting to the company, and that's how Xbox was born. I began work on the project in 99 and continued work on it really through 2016, 2017.
And so you spend a lot of time with Robbie Bach in learning the business and the failures and the first knowledge of the
I worked for Robbie Bach for a number of years. He was the executive vice president for the group, and he's still a close friend and he's an amazing individual and a leader that I have to give a lot of credit, because I learned a very important lesson from Robbie, and that is to manage people to make them the best version of themselves, rather than try to shoehorn them into something that they're not. Robbie is a master of that. And so there were, a few important lessons around following your curiosity and not being afraid to be curious and take risks to satiate that curiosity, And also, like I said, from rugby, about really managing people to be the best version of themselves rather than to try to morph them into something they're not, or a couple of very valuable lessons that I took away.
So to hear, this fascinating career, obviously you spent a lot of formative years at Microsoft, including when Microsoft starting its employee giving campaign. So talk a little bit about, your engagement there and how did you see that as impacting a set of values on you?
The giving campaign is Microsoft's annual drive for employee charitable contributions. And the thing that's always impressed me is that it's not just about money. Of course, they have fiscal goals and they have monetary opportunities to contribute, but they also focus a lot on time and encouraging people to make time to support the causes that really speak to them. And because it's an annual event, it gets a lot of attention. There's budget behind it. There's some healthy competition sometimes between divisions at the company. It's a lot of fun to participate in. And that encouraged me to begin really thinking about what causes I care most about. And this was very, very early. I'm 19, 20 years old, being exposed to this prioritization of giving back to the community. And it left a very, very important mark on me that inspired me throughout the years to begin developing and building ways, not only for myself to give back to the community, but to rally others to do the same. And my favorite one that went on for 20 years was called the Tulip Ride. And the Tulip Ride, it grew out of a very simple Friday afternoon in the year 2000. We were working very, very hard on the original Xbox, the original big black plastic console. We were all tired. We'd been living at the office for months at a time, trying to meet, impossible dates. And I've always been an avid motorcyclist my entire life. I've been riding, I don't even want to say how many years, nearly 50 years. And we have a small community of motorcyclists within the Xbox division. And I was exhausted one Friday and sent out an email one morning saying, I'm going for a ride. I'm going to play cookie all day long. If anybody wants to join me, meet down in the parking lot at 10 o'clock. And a lot of other people were similarly exhausted and wanted to get away for a day. And we wound up doing a lovely motorcycle ride up to a tulip festival in the Farmlands in Skagit Valley here in Washington, which is a beautiful April event every year. Miles and miles and miles of colorful blooming tulips. And we made it there and had lunch and took a scenic route through Whidbey Island on the way back. And we decided it was so fun that we would do it every year. And we started doing that ride every April. And each April, people started inviting a few more friends. And it grew to sort of all of the Microsoft riders. And then it grew to the Microsoft and Google and Apple and Facebook riders. And then Boeing joined us. And before you knew it, we had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of motorcycles requiring police escorts through intersections. And we would have vendors come and cater and host food for the event. But in the early days, I decided if we're going to have this many people doing something fun, let's see if there's a way to generate some give back to the community.
Right.
And we partnered with Seattle Humane, who has always been sort of my favorite charitable cause. I'm a big animal welfare fan. I love the work that Seattle Humane does. There are so many billions of pets that need loving homes that it was a great opportunity to partner with them and begin to turn this event into a charitable fundraiser, which over the years has raised over $850,000 for Seattle Humane. So it's been a really fun opportunity to grow a fun event and the positive impact that it has.
I'm quite sure that out of that, you have had a lot of people actually becoming much more aware of animal welfare, how to be human, pet adoptions.
Mm-hmm.
And that in itself is, I suppose, far more important than just the financial contributions, which are also very important, of course.
Yeah, it was really fun to have Seattle Humane's leadership come and speak at the beginning of the ride as all the riders are preparing to ride out. And they even brought what's called the Maxmobile, which is their roving truck full of adoptable pets. So they would have dogs and cats and puppies and kittens on site to really make the statement that this is about the pets and it's about helping them find the homes that they need. And I definitely think that touched a lot of people.
So, I mean, this is, great. I mean, and just for our listeners, couple of lessons here, right? Be curious. While at work or anything that you do, be curious. And don't be afraid to start something. It always takes a while for it to grow. But if you put a call out, you'd be surprised how many people are thinking about the same thing and just want somebody to initiate an action. And once that action starts, it's like this rock rolling down a hill and it just picks up moss. So don't hesitate to start. And Jeff is just this example of how something can grow and become so impactful out of just these small actions of doing something. So take the first step. It's this, always start something and you will know where it goes. Jeff, talk a little bit now about why purpose is so important to you and how does purpose help you when the going gets rough?
I loved how you said it. Don't be afraid to try things and be curious. Purpose is the thing that we fall back to, I believe, when everything doesn't go as planned, when it's not operating as smoothly as we would like. I've had plenty of those experiences over the course of my life, both personal and professional. And I think that purpose is the thing that helps you get through those times. It's fun when everything's going according to plan. It's fun when you deliver the product on time and on budget. It's a lot less fun when you're behind schedule and you feel like you're working endless hours and missing your family. It's fun when everything in your personal life is going swimmingly. It's really hard when a loved one is diagnosed with cancer or when you're not able to be with the people that you love. And I think purpose is that voice in your head that reminds you of why you're there, why you're doing what you're doing, why you've established this place for yourself. And remembering the why helps you endure those tough times. And sometimes it'll bring you clarity to help you get through those tough times if you really focus in on what's important. Now, I'll go back to the tulip ride as an example. There were years when the bureaucracy got painful, having to deal with permits and city ordinances and safety issues and litigation. Those are all pain points. And it's really easy to get stuck in those and feel like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to have to work with lawyers. I don't want to have to apply for permits. I don't want to have to give all this money to the city or the county in order to do this event. I just want to back away and escape it. But remembering the purpose, remembering the animals whose lives we're saving, remembering the families placing these animals, coming back to that core and coming back to that focus helps you get through those challenges. And the same applies to work, the same applies to family. So I think that being able to echo that purpose back to yourself is a skill that we all need to learn and remember.
Let's end with you sharing your one golden nugget, a piece of wisdom that you want to leave behind for our listeners.
My favorite golden nugget is think globally and act locally. And I think that that's particularly poignant right now as we're coming off of a heated political cycle, to say the least, that will leave a lot of people feeling frustrated and disenfranchised. And thinking globally, but acting locally doesn't mean you have to go run for office. It doesn't mean you have to run for a local office. It doesn't mean you need to be involved in politics. What it means is that you can have tremendous positive impact in the world right around you. Even if you feel completely powerless to influence politicians in Washington, D.C., on either side of the aisle, let that go for a moment and act locally to make your world and the world around you a better place. And let that be amplified as you make progress. And so when I say act locally, things like trying to change local legislature, if you want to be in the political world, but it can also mean picking your favorite charity and volunteering for it, or donating to it, or recurringly donating to it. Those little things can have tremendous impact. For example, I do a regular monthly volunteer and donation to help save the resident pods of orcas, which are an endangered species. They're incredibly beautiful creatures. They're my neighbors. I see them swimming around all the time. I ride Washington State ferries often, and we see them from the ferries. And even though I'm not sitting in Washington, D.C., managing the Endangered Species Act, I can still personally have a positive impact on our resident orcapod by donating and supporting things like the removal of dams for critical salmon population. So there are local things that we can do to have a positive impact on the world. And it doesn't take money, and it doesn't take a lot of time. It can even be as simple as calling a family member to check in on them and let them know you care about them, or meeting up with a friend that you haven't met with in a while to try to improve their day a little bit over coffee or lunch. So think globally, the things that you want to do to have a positive global impact, but act locally, because you can get real traction locally without enduring all of the frustration that you might have around the global scene.
This is such a fantastic way to kind of talk about, how purpose, Richard Maribot actually talks about creating bridging networks rather than bonding networks. And to me, purpose is that way where you actually create bridging networks. And Robbie Bob used a slightly different concept where he said, appreciate locally, but be effective globally. And that, to me, is the very interesting ways of how we think that every action we take, which is local, has global implications. And how do we keep both of that in mind?
You are exactly right. Exactly right. I'm not personally going to rid the ocean of dangerous plastics, but I'm going to think globally as I act locally by using a reusable water bottle rather than a one single-use plastic bottle. If enough people do them, number one, it will wind up aggregating to have global impact. But number two, we can all take some satisfaction out of making great decisions and focusing our time on local things that actually matter.
So that's a great way to end. So Jeff, thank you so very much for being on the podcast. Again, remember, purpose is this renewable source of energy that continues to drive humanity forward. Join us, be part of our conversation. Visit purpose-mindset.org and also become part of our book series that is coming out, Living with Purpose, where you can join us as being a co-author. Jeff, thank you very much for being part of this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. Actually, it was a pleasure to get to talk with you.
Yes, and I hope that we get to know each other a little bit more and what you're doing.
For sure.